Alright, it's live. Just gotta wait a second or two for the Facebook to kick. There it is. Wow, that kicked in fast today. Alright, welcome to Paranormal, the new normal. Another bonus episode for you guys this week. One I am very excited about because it's a different thing that I have not seen any other paranormal show do by far. Besides maybe some call-ins to Monsters Among Us, but whatever. I'm not copying the format anyway, so I'm good. And my guest today is younger than usual, but you know what? They know things we don't know, such as Creepypasta, because they're in the generation that created it and made it a big thing. So we're going to talk about Creepypasta today towards the end of the show after we talk about some other stuff first, of course. And my guest today is Allie Fisher, who, if you don't recognize the last name, is from my other podcast, Bracket Bastards, the head bastard's daughter. So I believe she calls herself the head know-it-all. If you listen to her podcast,
Yeah, pretty much.
All Answers with Allie, which I'm gonna let her tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. And I would highly suggest if there's any teenagers out there that listen to this and want to be on it, message her on Anchor and maybe it could happen. Please don't message her if you're over 18 because I'm not promoting that. But Allie, how you doing today?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Can't complain. Anytime I get to do a paranormal podcast, I'm a little happy. So, hello, Tamara. Good to see you. One of my co-hosts on another paranormal show I do. I am a bit. It's all good, Tam. It's fine. It was a interesting show, but you'll hear it in podcast form in a week. All right. So, why don't you tell them a little bit about your podcast since I only told them the name.
Yeah, so it's All Answers with Allie. We're trying to cover everything from like the teenage mind to paranormal to just anything that comes to mind for us. We've already covered things that they just haven't been posted about like we've covered one episode kind of about the paranormal and some creepypastas. We're trying to get more into like the teenage mind stuff because I've noticed that some teenagers and parents listen to us, so it's a way for them to combine the relationship and make it better. We also try to cover like a subject that comes in, like if somebody says they want to hear about this, I try to cover it. Sometimes we will cover like what's happening in the world. It just differs. It's go on.
Which you said those episodes are going to drop eventually because as of right now,
yes.
I believe you have 5 episodes released, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, because it's the backstage ones, which is where you meet our guest and co-stars and my co-host Tess. And then there's like the Mother and Father's Day episode.
I was going to say, you did a Mother's Day and a Father's Day special, which I can tell you, your father was so proud of that when he shared that with the group. It was like, oh my God, you guys, she actually did a Father's Day episode. I was
well, that was actually really hard to do because no one was able to record with me. So I had to improvise and just have them send in like voice messages and stuff. And we were completely unprepared, and I uploaded it like last minute. So not the greatest episode, but it's an episode about Father's Day.
Well, from what I heard so far, because the title definitely made me want to listen, because I was assuming you're talking about Freddy, so I had to listen. And from what I heard so far, it sounded really good. I mean, it reminds me of on Bastards when we send messages to your dad so that he can put them in for Father's Day, Mother's Day episodes, stuff like that. And like for my birthday episode, he did the same thing. So, but yeah, I definitely dig your show so far. I mean, it's kids say are a lot different from when I was a kid, so I will definitely say that. But it's better. It's better. Kids know about more these days, and that's definitely a good thing because we were so ignorant of a lot of things when we were kids. It was just what's going on that day, literally, and nothing else mattered. But so it's the future makes it a little brighter look for the future, I think, than the way a lot of people look at kids nowadays and teenagers nowadays. But
yeah, well, a lot of people do see teenagers as like just moody kids that want to do their own thing and don't want to listen, which what teenager, almost adult, wants to listen to someone tell them what to do anyway. So it's like,
I still don't like to listen to my wife tell me to do things. So
I mean,
that's
hey,
how it is.
independence.
Exactly. Everybody needs the free time and their alone time to do their own thing.
Yeah.
And always have hobbies. That's the secret to adulthood. Always have hobbies, otherwise you'll go crazy. But all right, so let's jump in here a little bit. Allie told me off camera that she has sensitivity to certain paranormal things around her, so I'm gonna let her tell me what type of things she's sensitive to in that field, and then we'll go from there.
So, one thing I'm sensitive to, and this is more like bad energy coming from a person. Like, if they were to walk into the room and all of a sudden the energy in the room changes, I normally try to avoid that person. Like, I know that they don't have a good uh, not era.
Aura.
Yeah, aura. So, like, I can sense their aura, and if something's like a picture's gonna fall or something gets knocked over, presumably, like when there's like no wind in the room, there's nothing to knock it over. I can sense it and sometimes catch it before it happens.
So kind of like a premonition type sense almost.
Yeah, that too. Because like one time I was sitting in the living room at my grandparents' home alone, and I like just like that photo is gonna fall. That like clicked in my brain, and I stuck my hand out and caught it before it hit the ground and shattered.
Okay, that's freaking awesome. That's almost like a superpower. No way. If only you could know when someone's gonna jump off a building or something, you could be a hero one day.
Yeah.
But I mean, that type of sensitivity is definitely one I've heard of before, and it's a good one to have because I mean,
Yeah.
my house has spirits, and I can't tell where the hell they are. So I wish I could.
Some like I know some celebrities also have that sense because they've done it like they're on a live and there's like a photo behind them and they catch it as it's falling. And it's a really cool sense.
It is.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
There's also a like if a like I can kind of sense / slightly see when like a ghost walks through a room. I can see the shadow at least. But it's really weird, and I can't say anything about it to anyone because there's like, oh, quit playing around, you're joking.
Well, I mean, eventually, as your friends get older, you'll meet people who will immediately either have the same type of ability in a way, or they'll be into that stuff and they'll understand it's very possible. So
Yeah.
Eventually, you'll be able to tell people eventually because they'll be more open to things like this. And that's part of the reason I want to do this episode is to help teenagers get more into paranormal because I've heard a few here and there that are, but it's not as common as it should be, as it was when I was a kid because we had all those TV specials about Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster and all that, and it always kept us all interested. But and aliens, I mean, God, there's a new documentary about aliens.
Yeah, aliens. That's an interesting subject.
It's in the news now, for God's sake. So you say you can see them sometimes, or when you said you could see their shadow, which
it's like I could see like they're outlined, like just barely. It's
okay.
Yeah, and like I could like if they're walking in like a sunnier place or there's like a light on them, I can like see it against the wall too. And then sometimes it like flickers. I don't know how to explain it. It's hard to see and then explain.
Interesting, because I've never heard anybody say that before, and I love when I hear new things in this show, and that's new. I never heard of spirits having shadows of their own, actually. Which brings mind to the theory that they might be ultra-dimensional and more than actual biblical spirits per way. Which
it's a possibility.
I mean, I've had a couple guests talk about spirits being ultra-dimensional instead of that heaven and hell are just different dimensions, basically. But or whatever you want to call them. I mean, I don't like to use religious terms on my show, really, because it puts you in a box in a way. But so, have you ever seen like actual shadow people by chance?
Oh yeah, I could. sometimes I'll be out like walking with friends around the mall and I can see them, or we're just outside at like a park and we can see them. But the thing is, with not recently moving, but moving in the past few years, I don't know the history of the place or like the town, so I don't know if anything happened in that town, so I could like kind of see people sometimes and feel that feeling of like someone's here watching us, but not know anything about who it is or why they're there.
Well, of course. I mean, I wouldn't expect you to know why every single spirit you see is there. That'd be a superpower and a half right there. But I've only read about that in books.
Well, if you learn the history of the town or place you're in, you can figure out why. And I've always believed that like the spirit is there for a reason, either to watch over someone, they're trying to finish something, or have like something to have something to fulfill, to move on and stop being in between the human world, as I would call it, and then the ghost world, which fits into the alternate dimensions thing.
Ghost World sounds like an awesome theme park, but
it would be an awesome theme park.
It really would. There's so many ghosts.
As long as it's not haunted.
Oh, it would be. You can't call something Ghost Park and not have ghosts be in it. I mean, I could see them freaking attracting ghosts in there and everything, but
just the ghost riding on the roller coasters.
Give me ideas for TV shows here, but what was I going to say next? Oh wow, blanking. But yeah, I mean, yeah, if you know the history of the place, it's a lot easier. And like you said, some of them do have reasons just to watch things. Yeah. I was told by investigators that's why the spirits in my house are here, is because they're watching over my kids, because they never could have any kids. Because it's the original couple who built the house, so we know that for a fact at this point. Well, I'm assuming it's a fact because investigators told me so, but I don't actually have it. Like, I didn't talk to them yet.
You never truly know.
But one of them did talk to me, and if any listeners already know that story, so if anybody wants to hear it again, check out a previous episode. That's a long story I'm not going back into, but basically one of them spoke in my ear and literally had me in chills through my whole body. It was cool and scary and confusing, but very emotionally confusing that was. But I guess I would assume that happens to anybody when they talk to a spirit, is that it's very emotional. It's very confusing, and your brain doesn't know how to comprehend it by any means.
Especially if it's like the first time talking to them, and you're not used to it at all.
Yeah, it's like going on a first date in almost in a way, in that type of sense. But so you never have seen any shadow people in any of the houses you lived in by chance?
I don't remember it very well because I was a lot younger. Okay. But there was one house I lived in, maybe it was an apartment, where I woke up. I can't even remember what the time was. I woke up and I could see people walking around in my room. But then, and it wasn't a dream because I knew I was awake, but I tried walking over to like tap their shoulders if they were turned away, and hand went straight through. Like, it wasn't there once I tried to touch it.
That's gotta be scary for a kid, but
yeah, especially when you're younger than 7.
Yeah, I would imagine that'd be extremely frightening. I mean, the house I grew up in my whole life was built by my parents, so there was never any haunting of any type. So as a kid, I never experienced anything. I didn't experience anything until I was in my 30s, for God's sake. So it was just a lifelong fascination with paranormal that got me to do this type of stuff. And it's funny
I grew up with all the horror stuff too. Like, God, I was like really young. My grandmother was watching me, but then she had to work, so I started going to a babysitter. Well, their kids would watch Chucky when I was around, and again, this is when I'm like 3 to 5. So I'm sitting in the living room downstairs watching it with them, and then this is kind of when my whole horror strike started.
Yeah, I mean, people who are able to watch horror at a young age usually get into it for life. It's just the way it goes. I mean, people like me who didn't watch anything until they were like a teenager, and even then it was a Jason movie, so it's not like it's real horror, it's just a slasher. But I never really got into horror because of that. I still to this day don't watch horror movies unless they're very paranormal related, like a Bigfoot movie or like a sea monster movie, that type of stuff. And I'll watch some haunting stuff too once in a while, but I'm not a big fan of it. My wife is. That's the way I see everything is through her. But it's funny you mentioned shadow people in a mall because that would be the perfect place for them to be. And I never even thought of that because shadow people like to feed on people's energy. And the
Yeah.
more negative energy they can feed on, the happier they are, and they'll stay in that location for a long time. Which is why if they're in a house and they try to find a somewhat happy house, but just their presence brings people down, and the parents will fight more, the kids will argue more. Like they just bring everybody in the house down. Which
Maybe
in
I
a
do have
mall,
some ghosts in my house then.
not you can't. Unfortunately, you can't blame everything in the world on paranormal. But I mean,
Sadly not.
yeah, in a mall though, that is perfect because where would there be more negative energy than when people are spending a lot of money they don't have? Which that would be a mall. So I know I've walked away from the mall broke many times. And that was back in my day when there was good. That was back in my day when there wasn't as many stores as there's nowadays. So,
I've
but
done it too. And the sad thing is, it wasn't very much either. It was just like a little bit of stuff. I spent over $100 on it.
that's all it takes nowadays. It's sad, but
Yeah.
you can't even go shopping and fill up your cart for less than $300. But so, any other sensitive moments you wanted to talk about or that you had?
Technically, I don't know if it would count as like an actual paranormal story, but in the last year or so, it actually around 3 a.m. because I struggle to sleep. So I'm up a lot at night. So I think it was around 3 a.m. I was laying on the floor trying to sleep when all of a sudden I could hear noises in the wall and the energy in the room changed.
Huh?
And it's not like it was raining outside where I could hear it like thundering and rain hitting the roof. It was actually in the walls. And I know it wasn't the pipes because I was the only one up. And like they don't just randomly go off like that. You've got to use a bathroom or do something with water.
Yeah, of
And
course.
the wall I heard it in was also a wall that was farther away from the bathrooms and didn't have any piping and stuff in it. It was actually like a kind of thin wall. And I couldn't figure out what it was. And every time I would walk past, actually where that photo that I talked about earlier was, I like the energy in the room immediately would get like heavier, and then I'd walk away or go upstairs to try to find the noise and it'd get lighter. So
Hmm.
again, not exactly sure what that was, but it's kind of a slightly paranormal story.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely paranormal in nature because anything unexplained is technically paranormal. I
Yeah.
mean, and there's no easy explanation for this because it's 3 in the morning, which is the witching hour. So spirits are the most active around that time, and I know that for a fact. But because my house is creepy as hell at 3 in the morning if the dogs are barking, I gotta take them out. My house is creepy as hell, standing outside of it or inside of it. It's creepy, but
Technically, it is said that dogs and cats, since their eyes are a lot different, that they can like see these spirits as well. So if they're not barking because they want to go outside, they might see something.
oh, that's happened. That's happened. I take them outside. They don't
Yeah.
do They don't do nothing. They just want to like walk around outside for a minute, and then they go back inside, and then they'll go back to their cage and fall asleep nice and peacefully. And I mean, we know the spirits like to go back and forth between the kitchen and the hallway. So, because
Yes.
my wife's sister saw shadow people walking that path like at 2 or 3 in the morning. Like she saw one shadow person walking back and forth, and they're just staring at her in the hallway. So we know they like the kitchen, and we know they like the basement because the basement just feels creepy as hell if you walk by it at night. But
The
and my I
basement,
mean,
no. It's always
yeah,
the
I mean,
basement.
well, if you think about it, spirits don't want to be seen most of the time, we believe, unless they actually want help
Yes.
with something.
Yeah,
So
it's
that's a
either
good place to
basement or
go.
attic.
And we really don't have an attic, so I don't see them going up there, or maybe they do. I don't know. My wife's
You
chickens go
never
crazy all the time. My wife's chickens go crazy all the time, and the biggest entrance to the attic is right in the garage. So very possible. Well,
Yeah, it's always a possibility.
yeah, animals are way more sensitive. It's been proven they can see things, and I just had the guest I had on last night was saying the same thing about her. I believe it was a cat. her cat would like react all the time to different spirits in her apartment. So I fully believe that pets can do it. And my pets also will start whining and barking if they get scared and you walk in and they're staring at the door going to the basement. But thankfully the kids don't pick up on it. That's the only good thing.
Well, some kids actually can pick up on it. I've seen videos, which again, it could just be made up and stuff, but these kids are actually like full on crying and freaking out. So I kind of believe it. But like they'll see something that the mom can't see while as she's recording them eating lunch, and they just both freak out and go to her crying and bawling their eyes out. So
yeah, I've heard lots of stories on podcasts too where a kid will see a picture of like a deceased relative like when they're a little bit older, like 4 or 5, and like they would always point and say something about like something they were seeing. They would be like, the man with the red hat, the man with the red hat, and they would, and then like years later when they get old enough to put things together, they'll see a picture of like their grandfather that's passed away or their parents' grandfather, something like along those lines, and they'll be like, "That's the man I always see," and the parents will be like, "What?
What?" Yeah,
like
it's another video. Another video. Oh, I'll let you talk.
I was just gonna say I've seen videos like that on YouTube as well, and a lot of them don't seem faked. I mean, a lot of them just don't seem faked. The reaction of the parents, I don't feel like some of those reactions can really be faked. It's just the way it goes.
Yeah, like I saw this one video where with a kid, he was pointing up at a vent in their bathroom, and he was like blowing kisses at it, saying a name. I don't remember what it was. And they're like, the mom looked at the child and went, "They're dead. Like, there's no one up there." And the kid just continued on saying the name and continuing his actions because it was like a 3-year-old and they didn't understand what was going on.
Yeah, of course. I mean, to them, seeing a spirit, they think it's another person. They don't understand it's not a living person, at least. And hopefully they're nice spirits, because I would not want my kid. I've heard stories as well about kids who they talk to men. They talk not men, but just spirits in general, and they will tell them to do things, and they end up doing bad things because of it, like cutting clothes up or stealing money or just things that a kid wouldn't think of on their own, really.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of stories about that too, where they'll listen to them and then something bad happens.
Yeah,
like walls will get destroyed, clothes, anything.
Yeah, it's a common phenomenon nowadays, but I think it's time we jump into the creepypasta world, because I am dying to learn more about creepypasta, because my son loves that stuff too, so does my daughter, and I'm like, to me, it just looks, I don't know what to think of it, honestly, and that's why I wanted to do this.
It's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a whole new generation of horror that my generation just didn't have. I mean, yeah, we had stupid videos on steakandcheese.com and other websites like that. I can't think of right now, but we had stupid little, like, basically what are GIFs today, like GIFs, like what are considered those today. We had those as videos in the early 2000s, just running constantly, like they wouldn't stop after finish. So very old school videos, and this is kind of like an upgraded version of that. So what we're gonna do, listeners, is Allie's gonna pick out her top 10. We're gonna try for, but if we don't get to 10, that's not a big deal. And we're just gonna go through them, and she's gonna tell us a little bit about these creatures, and I'm gonna try relating to the paranormal in any way I can, and see if maybe they came based on paranormal creatures, or were they completely original ideas that no one has really thought of before or seen before. And now I'll give you the mic.
All right, I've kind of got a list, so I'll probably look down a lot. I'm gonna just start off with what I have. Starting off with Jeff the Killer. I don't remember when this all started. It was back in like early 2000s, I think. He was a serial murderer, so serial killer. He killed a lot of people just for fun, went on a lot of killing sprees. So his look is really interesting. While he was in the hospital, like in an mental hospital, he realized he liked harming people. So once he was discharged that night, he took a knife or something sharp enough to cut a smile into his face and then burnt off his eyelids.
Dramatic.
Very dramatic. He also killed his parents, his brother, and then like people along in his neighborhood. It is said that his brother survived, though, which is another creepypasta called Lou. There is I don't know if this is true or not, but it is said that there is an actual person by Jeffrey Lee Woods who did the same thing and was executed, which I don't have very much information on that. Other than he was killed in Texas in 2000, or he got execution in 2008, and then then killed. He normally wears like a blood-stained hoodie. It's a white hoodie, and then he's got like black pants and Converse, which is really interesting.
Of course he has Converse.
Perfect killing shoe.
It is.
Yeah.
Not that I know that from personal experience, listeners. Just saying.
Like, hey, what's going on with that? Like, you a killer too?
Only in my rap fantasies, but other than that, no. But so, I mean, this relates to humans more than paranormal, but I keep getting Halloween vibes, which your dad hates, and I love that he hates it. But, but I keep getting Halloween vibes, like total Michael Myers vibes from that whole story, like escaping from a mental institution and killing your own family or trying to kill your own family, especially a sibling. I mean, it's very identifiable with that, but they didn't really expand on Michael Myers' backstory until the mid 2000s. So this has been around since early 2000s, and they obviously they might have been copying it a little, but they didn't copy it fully.
Yeah. And I think it's called The Expressionless, which is a movie that is kind of based off of these creepypastas, which I think that one is Jeff, because the whole facial thing. It's either Jeff or Eyeless Jack, which is another character I'll get into later.
So with creepypasta, do the members of the site like just keep adding stories to like the mythology of these creatures?
Yeah, there's some of them where I am confused on what the story is myself because there's so many copies of it. There's new characters added a lot of time. There was a new one recently added in the past few years called Candy Pop, which I don't have any information on currently.
I think my kids watch YouTube videos with her in it.
I've seen a lot of cosplays with her.
I mean, I haven't. They like to watch like these animations videos where it's obviously it's kids and teenagers making these animation videos because it's not no professional studio, but they like to watch these weird videos and just the sound effects that come off them, and I'll be sitting in the living room watching a movie and I'm like, are they watching a dirtier movie than I am? But like I'll be watching a rated R movie, I'm like, what are they watching? But I mean, I used to walk in all the time just to see, and it'd be some YouTube cartoon. I'd be like, all right, as long as it's not showing anything, to go with the sounds, I don't care. But it's just, I don't get why they like it. But continue. This is part of the reason I want to know more about this, is so I know what my kids are watching.
Yeah. So I actually have Toby's story. I don't know if I'm going to get into that or not, but I'm actually wearing his jacket, as I said earlier. But Toby, also known as Tobias Aaron Rogers, was a kid who had like mental disorders. He got tics, stuff like that. Let's see if I have more information on that. Then he was also constantly bullied for his tics and stuff, which sent him into his, yes, they always get bullied. Sent him into his like state of distress, and then it is said that his sister, I think her name was Leah, him and his sister Leah, or whatever her name is, were involved in a car accident, and she died. So that another traumatic event that happened. So then after that, he started losing his appetite and started like becoming less social, more keeping to himself, stuff like that. This is actually one of my favorite characters, by the way. Hold on.
So traumatic childhood, definitely. I
Yeah.
I almost feel like it's leaning towards Black Eyed Kid lore in a way, but
Yeah.
I'm excited to see where it goes.
So then he started like he was walking through the streets one night, and Slenderman, uh, I don't know how to say this, like saw him and started following him, and kept telling him to. First off, Toby hated his father. His father was an abusive alcoholic too, so more trauma. And eventually, Slenderman, or Toby saw Slenderman watching him from the streets and stuff, and yeah, sorry, I'm like half reading, half talking right now. So
uh,
he then started having visual and auditory hallucinations, which then his mother took him to a psychiatric hospital, mental hospital, whatever you want to call it, and uh, I think he escaped that and then listened to the voices telling him to kill his dad and killed his dad. Then he set the entire either town or block on fire. I can't remember what it was.
if you set the whole town on fire, that's pretty badass.
Sorry, set his neighborhood on fire as a distraction, but then was quickly surrounded by the flames. And then bringing Slenderman back into this, Slenderman saved him, saying that he wasn't done yet. He's got so much more to live for, and then he became a proxy, which a proxy is like Slenderman's henchman.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then he started killing more and going on more killing sprees, and it got on the news because why wouldn't it? And his mother saw it, and the only reason she knew it was Toby was because of a hatchet left the scene. Because Toby's like equipment is hatchets, and then he's got his goggle, his mask, and then his hoodie.
Is he a juggalo?
Possibly. His like skills are axemanship, and he's got a lot of physical strength. His goals was to kill his father, which he succeeded. And also another thing, I don't think I mentioned this earlier, he has a huge gash on his cheek right here, I believe from the car crash, which I forgot to mention earlier. And that's about it.
So basically, these days, Toby's just doing all Slenderman's bidding, which, for those who don't know, because even I know this, Slenderman is basically almost the father of Creepypasta. Like, it was one of the first big stories to come out of Creepypasta that got a lot of traction, and there are actually people that believe that Slenderman has become a tulpa of sorts and is a real thing because so many people believed in him.
I have a story about that I will get into later. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it was called the Slenderman Stabbing. It happened a few years ago, possibly. 2019, I think.
I remember slightly hearing about it, but I'll definitely let you tell more about it when you get to that part.
All right. I'll probably do that at the end. Next one I have is Sally Williams, if it will let me look at it. So Sally is a little girl, for one, and her story is also very sad and traumatic. It's so instead of it being a dad, this time it's an uncle. Sally is actually one of the youngest ones, as I said. So, one night her uncle decided to, I don't know if I want to say the word or not, but like rape or physically
assaulted.
Yeah, sexually and physically assaulted her, and then told her not to tell anyone else. But she did, and she told her mom. So then the reason he told her not to tell anyone because it was just a game. And then of course she told her mom, and then he's like, I'm gonna go out grocery shopping, Sally, come with me. And Sally was like, I don't want to go. Like, she kind of knows what's already gonna happen. But her mom's tells her just to go with him. He won't hurt you. Blah blah blah. Well, of course, then he takes Sally out, and possible trigger warning for this. So then he takes her, pins her to the ground, beats her up, rapes her again, and then smashes her head with a rock and kills her. Very traumatic death story. So she's more like a ghost.
I'd say so, but
yeah. So she actually continues to haunt her old house, scaring the living daylights out of its current residents and playing with the younger children because she still is a child. So she also. So I'm not 100% sure on this. I've seen videos about it. I don't know if it's true or not, but Slenderman saved her, like took her to his mansion in the woods and like healed her up, although she still has like blood running from her head and all of that. There's actually there's a voice recording. If you go look up Sally Williams' voice on YouTube, you can listen to her voice recordings.
But is this based on a real person, or?
I think so, yes. I think she's one of the very few ones that are actually a real story.
Yeah, because that's a traumatic story that sadly happens too much in this world as is, and it plays out that story plays out exactly how it happens in the real world, unfortunately. But
yes, sadly.
And I'm almost getting the feeling that Slenderman is a type of like Batman or Captain America, supposedly in this universe, and he just recruits all these people to be on his like super team.
See, but then at the same time, he's also the villain of the story by using them to do his dirty work more and kill people. And he kind of keeps them, I believe, again, not 100% sure on this, he kind of keeps them captive.
All right, so he's trying to think of something that related.
I want to say like a vigilante.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of like,
because
he reminds me of the government in comic books, because there's a team called the Thunderbolts, and also on DC side, Suicide Squad, and it's all prisoners or kept in cages and let out to kill people, basically, or to rescue. Well, Thunderbolts are supposed to be heroes, so they rescue people, but kind of the same idea at least. But that's the one thing I'm starting to get from all this is it's a lot like that. Like, it seems like they took they took the comic book universe ideas and like put it into horror, which is kind of cool. I like that.
It is very cool. Do you want to connect that more to like the paranormal side? Because that's it for her story. I can move on to the next one.
Well, as far as paranormal goes in that, there are plenty of cases where spirits had bad things happen to them in childhood, so they do haunt where they live until they're either moved from that location by someone who knows what they're doing, or they decide to move on eventually if the house gets torn down or something. But that's basically that relates to paranormal. It's a very common ghost story, for lack of a better word, or actual ghost stories. I mean, real life ghost stories that have that exact same origin story in a way. But
it's a very sad origin story too.
Well, I mean, on a site called Creepypasta, I wouldn't expect them to all be happy.
Yes, everybody can be a killer if you push them far enough. So they hit their too far point and boom, killers. So
yeah, very relatable.
Yes. The next one, I am not at all 100% sure on this because I've heard two stories about him. It's Ben Drowned, also known as the Haunted Majora's Mask, which is related to the Zelda game.
Yeah.
So there's two stories. I'll start off with the first one, which is Ben was sacrificed by a cult known as the Moon Children, and the person responsible for killing him was a man called the Father, which, if it isn't clear in his name, he was drowned.
I assumed, but good to clarify things.
Yes, because, I mean, hey, it might just be a last name. You never know.
I've heard weirder.
Yeah. So he was sacrificed by drowning. His birthday is April 23rd, 1990. And in the year, I messed that part up. I was going to say in the year 2002, he died on that same day, but he was still kind of like a kid when he died, so that doesn't work out that much. Kind of. Wait, no, that works out. I'm dumb. So which
It's all
fun.
good.
Sorry, funny story is if any of you read Wattpad stories, like especially the younger audience that were hoping to get kicked into this, people write stories about him, the appropriate stories where he's like the more mature one. He is a child. He's not mature. He's one of the least mature ones in there. So that's another interesting point. And again, you can also find his voice on YouTube. It's a little bit darker and creepier than Sally's, obviously. So then, his real name was Benjamin Lawman. He was 12 when he died, I think. And then his other death story is that he was bullied, and one day his bullies decided to steal his video game, and that bully got in trouble by the teacher. So the bully got revenge by finding Ben at like at a beach or near a lake, and picking up a stick and first they beat him up and then picked up a stick and stabbed his eyes out, or like
Oof.
sticks in his eyes. I don't know how else to explain it. So then his soul or spirit transferred into the game that he had, which was The Legend of Zelda's Majora's Mask. So, and then that copy of the game got passed around, and anybody who saw it, their eyes would be plucked out or whatever, and they would die while playing the game. So that's the second story, and that's all I really have on him. And
that's interesting, actually.
yeah.
That's
so
Ring. That's almost like reminiscent of the Ring. Similar,
also the reason, well, I forgot to mention the reason why it's linked to Zelda is because that was his favorite game, for one, and two, his like creepypasta character, for the people that are into like Zelda and stuff, his character looks like Link, which is a Zelda character.
Anybody listens to my podcast doesn't know what Link is, I would be highly surprised. my podcast is all older listeners who grew up with these games.
Well, for the younger audience you're trying to pull in, they may not know. So.
They better learn then. It's Zelda. Show respect.
Yes.
But I kid. So, all right. I mean, yeah, like I said, this is very, or like it reminds me of the Ring. It reminds me of a lot of like Japanese folklore about Oni or Japanese demons. Like that's what it reminds me of.
Don't get me started on Japanese and stuff like the spirits and stuff like that. I actually have a whole nother presentation on Japanese and then some Spanish ones. I'm still working on it, actually. It's got things like Hatsushima.
Is that gonna be an episode of your show, or?
I'm hoping to put it as an episode of my show because I started making this before I started my podcast, and like that's something I've really wanted to get into. But unless I record it alone, it's gonna be really hard to record.
Well, I mean, sometimes you gotta do solo episodes.
Oh, I've done solo episodes. They just haven't been uploaded yet, except for the Father's Day one, which was solo, just with voice messages.
Yeah, which is a good thing about podcasts like yours is you can do that. Like on none of my podcasts can I do them without a guest, really, or can I do them without a co-host? I mean, especially Bracket Masters, we need 5 people on that, for God's sake, to make it work, or at least 3. But no one wants to hear an episode of just 3 people. So I would imagine, at least.
Yeah, that's another good thing about mine is we don't have like one main subject, so we can have like 2 people, have it just be me and Tess, have it be like me and Sprina, also known as Denki, or just one of our members, or like co-host, not co-host, guest on our show.
Yeah, it's a good thing to have variety in a podcast. Keeps people interested.
Yes. interesting titles also catches their attention, because okay, it took me about 2 minutes to come up with the Father's Day one. I'm like, I got to come up with something creative, and I don't remember exactly where I saw it, but I saw a post, and it was talking about dads like always not having a shirt on, and I'm like, that's it. I've got to make a title out of something, like make a title like this. So that's how I came up with the title for the Father's Day episode.
Origin stories here, folks. Origin stories,
Yeah.
which is I mean, yeah, that title definitely captivated me as soon as I saw it. I was like, is Freddy dancing shirtless again? But
It's
I
like,
mean,
I should have. I kind of wanted to. I was like so tempted to make a comment about dads being shirtless in that episode, but then I don't think I did.
yeah, I didn't get to the end yet, so I couldn't tell you if you did or not. But
I don't. I don't think I did. I was again. It was like 2 hours before midnight, and I was kind of just rushing it.
yeah, rushing
So
podcasts is never good. It never works.
yeah.
It's just
So that's why I said that's not one of my proudest episodes. And then my first one, the one with Cameron, also called Sir Camelot. His that was not another good one because his audio was terrible because we did it over a Snapchat call, and I had my phone sitting by my laptop recording. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. To do a podcast proper, they need to have a laptop and a headset to really make it be perfect.
Yeah,
That's
of
just the
course.
best.
At the time, I was also in school. Like, well, not in school, but like I had my
Yeah.
school laptop. So I sat at home up in my room one day and recorded when we had an early out. And it was just like, it's the first episode. I'll edit it. We'll get it out. And then that's got it out for the first episode to start it.
Yeah, well, it's. I mean, you could definitely tell it's a rough episode, but the volume was definitely like turn up, turn down, turn up, turn down. But I mean, it still worked. And first episodes are always rough. My first episode of every show I ever did was rough. It's just the way it goes. Until you get in the flow
Yeah.
of things, it's always a rough thing to do. The first
So,
episode,
and
or at
then,
least first 5, even maybe. It depends on the show, but
so like, even then, I'm also trying to figure out how to record for my first episode, record with somebody all the way down in like the Florida area while being in a different state.
well, that's when Anchor comes in, or any of those
Yeah.
sites that help people do that.
All right.
But
I feel like I should get back on track with the creepypasta stuff.
go ahead, but it's all good.
The next one I'm gonna go over is Eyeless Jack, also known as EJ, because just shorter name. His origin is his name was Mitch, or sorry, a man named Mitch moved in with his brother Edwin after his house foreclosed. Mitch woke up with a huge gash on his cheek. This is not Toby. Had a huge gash on his cheek, uh, and then he went to the hospital a few days later and found out that one of his kidneys got removed surgically without him knowing.
Oh, it's
So that's
how? How? I mean, that's
must
just
be a heavy sleeper.
must
So
be.
so this isn't actually Eyeless Jack. This is like how his origin story of how he is found. So again, he must have been a heavy sleeper, and Jack got in. Eyeless Jack got in and removed it, and he's also a cannibal, so he ate it.
Lovely.
So yeah, and then the next night, Mitch woke up while it was happening, and he managed to grab his phone and capture a photo of him. And Eyeless Jack's, at least his facial appearance, is a blue mask with black like ink dripping out of where his eyes should be, and hensing on his name.
Huh? That's creepy. I wouldn't want to see that
Yeah,
in a dark alley.
I wouldn't either.
So is this where? So did Slenderman rescue him too after he was eyeless,
Uh,
or?
I don't know. I think it was just kind of found, like Slenderman found him later on and was like,
Uh,
"You're a killer. Come join us." I'm not 100% sure on that. But another interesting part is apparent the Mitch guy died after that because Eyeless Jack killed him. And it also, I think it's also said that his roommate had died. No, sorry, Mitch didn't die, but his roommate did.
okay.
The Edward guy died that night. So then they go over to collect the stuff from the house, and Mitch helps them and sees Edward's corpse with a small object laying next to it. Now, as I said earlier with Toby, his sign was a hatchet, like
Yeah.
because he uses axes and hatchets. Uh, Eyeless Jack, also EJ, uses a surgical knife. So Mitch found a surgical knife next to Edward's corpse.
Makes sense.
Which, yeah. Uh, so they don't know if he's human or not, which is really interesting. It says he could either be a human or a mysterious entity. They believe he's male. His goals were to break into as many houses as he could and eat kidneys of his victims, which is said to still be ongoing, and then murder as much people and avoid getting caught. And then he's, as I said earlier, a cannibalistic murderer.
All right. That's. It seems like a lot of these creepypasta are based on famous murderers or urban legends of murders. I mean, because the whole kidney being removed thing, that's been a, well, kind of an urban legend, but like a scary story to tell kids so they lock doors. But it's also been a proven thing that's happened for a long time, especially back when you could actually get away with doing that and selling the kidney. Nowadays, it's a lot harder to do that because hospitals have ways to check everything. But in the 70s and 80s, that was a big like movie plot, TV plot, is that that would happen to someone. But
Yeah.
nowadays, it's not as much anymore. But I mean, Eyeless Jack. That just sounds. And Eyeless Jack also kind of looks like a Oni, from what I'm guessing. I think the people. I think people who create creepypasta are really into anime in their own way. They're into the horror anime, I think.
Yeah, or like Japanese legends, stuff like that.
Yeah, which it's interesting. I mean, I myself could never get into anime. It's just never was my thing. I had friends all my life who were into it, but I couldn't. I don't like things that
It's
are dubbed and subbed.
well, yeah, that's the thing is unless you know Japanese, you gotta watch it dubbed or subbed, which can be a little annoying. Although some of the animes are good, I'm into anime. I've been trying to get to watch Death Note, but it's really hard to do that when you're surrounded by kids.
Yeah, 100% because Death Note will scare the crap out of kids. But
Yes. Well, see, a lot of animes, it's got something that is not kid appropriate. Like, I can't remember what it was. Maybe it was One Piece or something. But there was like nudity in it or something. Maybe it wasn't One Piece. I don't remember what it was, but some animes have got like nudity, killing, a whole bunch of stuff.
oh yeah,
Some,
the Japanese love their nudity. Don't get me wrong, I know that for a fact. But and they love their violence as well. They are. I've
yes.
There is one Japanese Americanized show I watch called 2 Minute Horror Stories, and it is very. They do a lot of Japanese like oni and demon stories in there as well, and about like the rituals you have to do when someone dies to prevent them from staying in a house. Like it's a very informative, interesting show. If CW is still doing it, I haven't seen it in a couple of years, but
I was talking to my mom the other day, and before I came here, and she was talking to me, and she's like, she watches a show called Ghost Adventures. I think it's on Hulu. And it's
oh
like, hey,
god,
you know about H.H. Holmes, right? And I was like, yes, that's like one of the very first serial killers, right? And she's like, yeah, well, they did an episode on that.
yeah,
And like, I do, like found a way to talk to him, and then like something about who there's like a question about who killed Billy, and so on. But that's like another really good show to watch if you're into the paranormal stuff.
You're the second person on this podcast to tell me that, and I might have
It's
to
a good.
check it out someday. I Whenever I see any show that has ghosts in the title, I assume it's going to be one of those stupid like Discovery Channel shows where it's like the ones that South Park makes fun of all the time. Like
Yeah.
that's what I imagine. But you're the second person to say Ghost Adventures is actually pretty good, so maybe I will have to check that out because I I can't. It's on Hulu, so I can watch it because I canceled my Discovery Plus because streaming services are ridiculous, but 100% ridiculous. But with the prices they charge nowadays, but yeah, I
Everything is
mean,
going up in price.
yeah, unfortunately. So yeah, that's basically all I can relate that creepypasta to, paranormal wise. I mean, I'm still waiting to get to one that reminds me of Bigfoot.
I mean, I've got an animal one coming up next. It's not exactly related to Bigfoot, but it's at least something. Like
Animal ones,
fur.
I definitely can relate animal ones to paranormal more than I can human ones. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. So this one's called Smile Dog, also known as Smile GPS or JPG. It's supposedly a haunted photo of a dog, which like has bloody handprints on it, and the dog. It looks like the dog's smiling. It was. It dated back to like the beginning of the internet too, and it became to have a reputation, and it would be sent out to people like. So if you were to see it, like see the original photo, it would like drive you crazy and keep telling you to like send it or keep sending it to people to get it to go away from you. They when the viewers see him, they can see the photo, they can then see him in every corner of their eye. Like they'll just be like looking off into a corner and they'll see Smile Dog. Some of these result in serious seizures, and there's no clear understanding on why this happens to the victims of this photo. And then they can also see it in their dreams. He's everywhere. So
Yeah, it's funny because smiling dog I've heard of because that's been around. I've heard podcasts about that before, and it's I think in Internet Urban Legends did a episode about it.
yeah, see the thing is to get rid of it, you gotta send it to somebody with no email address or like no way to return it, and then it should go away, or you'll end up dying from it. The species is known as like a hellhound straight from hell, or that's at least what I have it marked as. Hold on, I have a little bit more information. Like what his powers and skills are, his hobbies, and then his goals. And as you said earlier with the whole urban legend things, it actually says the type of creepypasta it is a satanic urban legend.
Yeah.
So I think it might relate to the smiley dog thing. So its powers and skills are said to be insanely indicament dreams or nightmares / manipulation, blackmailing, high patience and persistence, like to keep the photo going, and he can enter in between the cyber world and the real world, which explains the whole see him out of the corner and then online. And his appearance is sharp claws, teeth. He also has murder skills and demonic powers. It's like, sadly, the photo I actually have on here is too dark for like me to zoom in and show you guys. So
Probably a good thing based on what you said.
yeah, but maybe I could have my dad send it to you later
Oh, yeah.
if you want to. If you want to look at it.
I've
Okay.
seen them. Because the podcast I watched had the cover of it was a picture of him. So, which I haven't died yet, so I'm assuming that doesn't exactly work that way over podcast. But
I don't. Yeah. It might have not been the original photo. Like it can. They made copies of it that you can view, but it says it's the original, but it's not.
yeah. Well, I'm sure he wouldn't want the original that going around anyway. But you actually said it
Depends.
yourself. You said it yourself. The word that describes this the paranormal, hellhound, which
Yeah,
or black dogs or shags, or they're called different things around the world, but hellhounds are a very paranormal thing. And I actually had a guest on here from the UK who investigated a church where there's black marks on the wood door, and they actually say it's from when a hellhound chased people inside the church 200 years ago and jumped on the door, and that the marks are still there from that.
that
So
sounds interesting. I'll have to listen to that later.
yeah, that was the one with Night Sky Paranormal. He's from UK. Wazo, or I think his name was Wayne. I can't remember his last name right now. Sorry, buddy. I talked to a lot of people, but yeah, I mean, it was hellhounds are very interesting because there have been plenty of accounts of people seeing them, and even the famous blues musician, who I'm forgetting the name of course now because I always do, who signed a deal with the devil. It was said that
Jeez.
it was said that he heard hellhounds before the night he died. He heard hellhounds around the club he was playing before he died that night.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so I mean
Alright.
that one definitely relates to paranormal because hellhounds are in everything. I mean supernatural especially, but they're in everything.
All right. Moving on to the next one, Laughing Jack, also known as LJ, which that's why I kept saying or EJ or the other Jack's full name, Eyeless Jack, because it mix these up a lot. So this one's a killer clown, basically. Um, so Laughing Jack is a magical being with incredibly dark powers, uh, like teleportation, and he can like immediately disappear in a puff of black smoke, turn himself invisible, manipulate bodies of his victims. Uh, so there's again two stories with this. One of them is that he grew up with a kid named Isaac, which I will get into more later. But here's another story I have, which this one's interesting because it's got to do with parents again. Having enough of Laughing Jack, the mother in the story grabbed a knife and tried to kill him, but LJ simply vanished into a black cloud of smoke, and the mother got distracted and accidentally plunged her knife into James' beating heart, which is, I'm guessing, the husband or the child. I can't remember off the top of my head, killing him instantly. I have more on this. I just gotta find it. So then the police arrested her and sent her to a like mental hospital for a house for the criminally insane. She then claimed to being institutionalized, and it's not that bad, and is not that bad, despite nobody believing her because Laughing Jack, like, yeah, nobody believed her, and then of course Laughing Jack tormented her more by playing Pop Goes the Weasel a lot around her outside her room. So, and here's the second origin story. He was created by a guardian angel, then was like a colorful clown, like Jack in the Box. At first, whose personality reflected on uh, his powers, and then he was later sent to as a Christmas gift to a kid named Isaac, as I mentioned earlier. Yeah, to a lonely kid named Isaac Grossman in the 1800s. Well, Isaac grew up in a cold, ugh, grew up into a cold-hearted serial killer who like kidnapped and tortured people. So, and yeah, killed innocent residents, stuff like that. So then Jack saw all of this, and it reflected into his own personality, and his skull. I can't talk today. Color started to change from colorful to dark black and white. So, yeah, he was horrified at first, but then he was tainted, and by Isaac's sinister actions, and Jack one day got released from his like little Jack in the Box container and appeared to be a taller, darker, demonic version of himself. That's all I really have on him as his two origin stories.
Well, Laughing Jack, the first thing that comes to mind, of course, is Pennywise.
Yes,
That's the first thing that comes
two
to mind
very
in my world. But I mean, there's also killer clowns have been around forever, and I mean, a favorite, of course, is Wayne Gacy.
Oh
He's a famous.
yes,
He's the original famous killing clown that Pennywise is loosely based on,
yes.
and of course, Pennywise has more abilities, but I mean, there's been other killing clowns too. I mean, I don't. I want to say Ed Gein, but I feel like he didn't dress like a clown. But there's been other ones as well, and the pop cultural world is full of clowns that are killer. American Horror Story,
Yeah.
Killer Clowns from Outer Space, even though that's a little bit different, but it's a funny movie to watch still. Thank you, Bracket Bastards, for making me watch that. But yeah, halfway to Halloween. Woo! But and also it reminds me in a way of Robert the Doll, which is a paranormal subject.
Oh gosh.
And we actually
Which,
covered him on Global Strangeness this past week. We covered Robert the Doll and other dolls that were haunted.
I did a episode with one of my friends, with Tess, and then one of her friends, Claire, which hasn't been posted yet. It's in the middle of being edited. Where Claire started talking about that
Yeah,
and told
Robert the
the
Doll
whole
is very
story.
fascinating. It's very fascinating, and the story is kind of similar to this. I mean, the kid who was given Robert the Doll didn't become a serial killer by any means, I don't think, but he, at least not as far as we know, but he did. The doll was just always said to be a strange thing, and people would hear things running around and when everybody's sleeping, and
Yeah, and then
very Chucky-esque.
another thing with that whole doll is, from what she told us yesterday, is that like they would see the doll, or like I can't remember if it was like in a museum or something, but they would like see the doll and something bad would happen to them afterwards. Either they'd be like in a car crash, they'd die, they'd get divorced, something bad would happen in their life, which was a really interesting part.
If you Google it, there's a pictures of Robert the Doll in his museum in Key West, Florida, and
Yeah.
all around his case is letters from people apologizing for taking his picture, for not greeting him properly, and they all say things happened after they left it. They didn't do one of those things, or they did something wrong in front of Robert. And the museum even says at night, like, strange things, and their cameras have picked up like weird little things running around and all that, and different exhibits will be out of place, and it's creepy. The fact that a doll could have that much power is so creepy, and just adds on to the fact that reason I don't like dolls like that. We even got we got rid of one of my daughter's dolls because it was so creepy looking. She didn't like it anyway, so she didn't care. But
I think it would be really interesting to have like a creepy doll in your house until it starts tormenting you and your family.
yeah, I'm good on that. I already got 2 spirits. Yeah. I don't need a doll. But
technically, you'd have 3 spirits because the spirit would be controlling the doll.
True.
I actually had an English essay that I had to write. It was like writing a horror story or something like that. I'm like, I couldn't think of any ideas, and then all of a sudden it hit me: a person stuck in a ceramic doll. And I won't get too far into this, but like just a quick summary of it is, there was this guy who was in a psych ward, and he died, and it was an abandoned psych ward. So these kids went and explored it and found a patient's list and then the doll. Well, one of the main character has a little sister, so she picked up the doll, brought it home, and gave it to her sister. Of course, the doll took possession of her sister and started doing terrible things, like destroying the house, coloring all over her walls, cutting up her clothes, until they finally got rid of the doll, or rid of the spirit and the doll.
Interesting. Almost Chucky-esque, but not exactly the same in a lot of differences. Yeah. So it's not like I definitely don't think you plagiarized at all, because that's original. That's a very original story. So
it was kind of it was a school project. I didn't copy it word by like every copy off a certain subject. I kind of just built my own, and then it kind of
Yeah.
related to that, and I realized it after I wrote it. And another thing about my podcast, when you mentioned John Wayne Gacy, that caught my attention because I also have an entire 44-page Google Slides on serial killers from like A to Z. I'm missing a whole bunch though, but I will start doing those like tiny episodes with each like page and talking about them more into my podcast too.
Interesting. You'll definitely get listeners for that one because serial killers and true crime are a huge podcast market.
Yeah.
You just got
Like
you got to make sure you got to make sure you have your dad like marketing these for you on Facebook and Twitter and everything.
Yeah.
Just I mean, obviously leave out some details, but
Yes.
you don't want creeps. But so what's the next creepypasta entity we have to deal with?
So this one isn't technically a creepypasta. This is a real person also. I think they called it a hornet instead because it was an actor that went insane or something. It's connected to creepypastas, but then at the same time it's not. It's just in my list. Brian Thomas, also known as Hoodie in the creepypasta / hornet world, was a male who decided to attempt to kill a person they knew named Alex, and then he stalked Jay and Tim, which is two other people, and I'm pretty sure Tim actually became a creepypasta, which I think is actually the next one, named Maskey. So he's a anti-villainous stalker. I couldn't really find very much on him other than who he tried to kill and all that. So that one's a real person. His appearance is it's like a yellow hoodie, and then he's got his face entirely blacked out by a mask with two red eyes, and then I can't remember if it's a frowny face or a smiley face. I think it's a frowny face. Yeah, it's a frowny face. And then his tool is like a crowbar.
Seems very Purge-like.
Pretty much.
But yeah, I mean, definitely creepypasta doesn't seem to disappoint, I would say. That's for sure. And even though this isn't a real creepypasta, I mean, it's still in that world, and they don't seem to disappoint when it comes to the horror.
They don't. Okay, yeah, here's the other one. The Tim guy, also known as Timothy Wright, is Maskey, which he has his name because his outfit is also like a hoodie, and then I seem to wear hoodies a lot. Hoodie, and then like a white mask with black around his eyes, and then a black mouth. His relatives are unknown. He was I want to say, I don't know. He was also a form of mental patients. I believe he was an actor or something. His powers are like your average human abilities. He could just kill people. It's said that he is still alive. I don't know where. So he's obviously male. His hobbies are stalking. His goal was also to kill the same Alex guy, which he succeeded, and he's an anti-villain. I think I also have more on him. This is rare for me to find. I can sometimes find him, but it's more voice quotes than anything. But Maskey's quote is, "I'm not a psychopath," which is really interesting because he kind of is. Like, he killed people. Apparently he blacks out a lot and is unable to awaken for up to a few hours and then doesn't remember anything. And another thing is that he smokes, which, going back to the whole Sally and Slenderman thing, here's a tiny bit of a story I found. Maskey is like, "Yeah, I still smoke, even though Slenderman doesn't let me smoke in the mansion or near Sally," which doesn't make any sense for obvious reasons of her being dead. And then Slenderman's like, it's not about her health. I'm guessing her uncle smoked, which there's scent triggers.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So that's all I really have about Maskey or Tim. Oh god, the next one.
Seems like a punk.
Pretty much. Do you have any way to really connect that to the paranormal?
Not really. He seems more like a human serial killer than anything else. Like
He,
he just
I mean, pretty much is, and it said that he's still alive. But he's one of the Hornets, and the only reason he's really connected to this is because of the way he looks, and then him and Hoodie trying to kill the same person. Just Hoodie failed, and then Maskey succeeded killing him.
Now you keep saying Hornet. For our listeners who don't know what that is, what is that? Because I'm one of those listeners.
that's really hard to explain because I'm not, again, fully sure on that. But they're not originally creepypastas. These two are real people who had these real situations, and they came from like a different section and then were brought in and mixed in with the creepypastas. So they're not original creepypastas. So when I say Hornet, I mean like they're from a different section, but have been brought into the creepypastas. If that makes it any easier to understand.
Kind of. I mean, it's I'm trying to think of a way to compare it to something, but I'm falling a little short. But I mean, it's kind of like in the old Abbott and Costello films where they'd meet the Universal monsters, and like they're not really Abbott and Costello obviously aren't in the Universal monster world, but they just tend to meet all these monsters from the Universal pictures like Frankenstein and the Mummy and all that stuff. So it's kind of similar to that. To my older listeners, that's maybe a entryway point. I've had to explain that.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to the next one. So I'm actually not a huge fan of this one. It's just her story's really interesting. So it's about this girl. Her name was, oh God, I want to say Jane, but I don't think that's right. Hold on. I'll find her name or it will come to me as I talk about her. So she was originally just a normal teenage girl who came from a broken family. She started to change drastically when her family started verbally and physically abusing her. The age of the abuse is unknown. She was unable to tell anyone at the time. The only true person she felt safe with was her older brother, but that was until he sexually abused her, which that seems to be an occurring thing, is abuse and sexual abuse.
My guess is the people that write these stories went through the same thing themselves, and it's their way of coping. It's their way of warning other people about
Yeah,
these
I'm guessing
things.
that's pretty much it. And then she talked to a girl in her class that she thought was her friend, but she got backstabbed and and then the girl Mia spilled her secrets, promoting online and in real life harassment towards her. Natalie, that was her name. So Natalie was like she was on 16, and then things got even worse. She's in a relationship. Her boyfriend breaks up with her, leaving her heartbroken. And then she gets a really negative mindset and goes home and goes into her bathroom, planning on hurting herself, but then she kind of snaps, plans on hurting herself. So what she does is she takes a needle and thread and starts sewing like a kind of smile shape, kind of like how Jeff's is, a smile shape with stitches into her and around her mouth. And then, so then it was a smile with black threads and stitches. So then her mother found out about this, freaked out, tried to send her into therapy. Well, everything takes a turn for the worst. She goes even more insane, kills her therapist or doctor, whatever you want to call it, returns home, grabs a knife, kills her parents and brother, and kills them, and then burns the house, and then runs into the forest. Eventually, like Slenderman area, getting there. But then the reason she's also called Clockwork for the actual creepypasta name. I forgot to mention that at the beginning. Clockwork then takes a kind of like clock, like one of those watch clocks, and sews it into her eye. And that's kind of how she gets her name. Her relatives are said to be Mary Beth Culette, which is her mother, which died, David, her father, and Lucas, her brother. And then her. So, okay, obviously most of these are not fan fictions, made up stories. But for the people that like believe in these and believe that it's possible to meet them and want to meet them for some reason. I mean, as a kid, I kind of did, but personal reasons. The way that you can tell if Clockwork is near is by hearing the sound of the clock tick and seeing her glowing eyes.
Very reminiscent of Stranger Things season 4, but
I haven't seen Stranger Things yet.
that's why I'm not going. A lot of people haven't, so I'm not
Yeah.
going. I'm not going into it fully, but I'm
Good.
just saying it is. There's a clock theme, but other than that, yeah, that's once again they don't disappoint. But jeez, I mean, this. I'm actually trying to think. I'm like, this isn't what a lot of this isn't what my kids watch. So what the hell are they watching?
See, they watch the animations, which is normally based off, as you said, animations. So they're normally based off like the fanfics, and makes it more fun and interesting, and makes it seem like a happy type of thing, even though they're killers. I'm telling the original truth, not what they're
Yeah,
watching.
of course. I'm trying to think of the one character my daughter loves. I forget what she's called.
It's a girl.
Yeah.
Jane the Killer, Nina the Killer, Clockwork, Sally, Candy Pop. Oh God, what's her name? There's one girl. She's like part demon.
No, it's maybe it's not. Maybe it's not based on Creepypasta what they watch. Maybe it's something else. It's I don't know. I mean, they watch a lot of Minecraft, Roblox stuff as well, so it could easily be from one of those worlds. But
it could be anything. Like,
yeah, I know YouTube is so vast nowadays. It's crazy. I'm trying. Of course, the one time my daughter's not in the room. Oh, Kissy Face or something like that.
Gosh, Poppy's Playtime.
Yeah, there's a character called like Kissy Face or something like that, right?
Kissy Missy, yes.
Okay, yeah, that's the one my daughter loves. Yeah.
Yeah, the pink, big fluffy thing. Yeah, I'm not too much into that. My like 4-year-old cousin is though.
Yeah,
so
I would assume it's below your age level for entertainment, but
yet it's a horror game.
yeah, I mean, but they also like Five Nights at Freddy's. So
Nights, yeah, FNAF, all of that's really interesting.
Yeah, it's the stuff kids have nowadays is so 100% different than what I watched when I was a kid. I mean, Nick cartoons don't compare to these things in the slightest, and I feel like Nick cartoons were better, but that's my opinion. Kids are gonna like what they like at their time. But all right, we're almost coming up an hour and a half, so pick your favorite, best one to do next, and we'll call that the final one, and then maybe we can do a part 2 someday.
Possibly. Well, I really want to go over the whole Slenderman stabbing thing, so I'm gonna kind of go into Slenderman's character more.
I was hoping you would.
Yes, that's a good thing. So Slenderman is a tall. tall man thing, faceless, black suit, and then like tentacles, obviously. So, um, hold on. What? What about it? One moment. I'm helping my dad with something.
Understandable.
So, Slenderman, as I said, that's what he looks like. Pretty simple design. He's like the head, like boss or whatever. He tells them what to do. So, uh, so one way I would say to know how Slenderman's around is there's like a loud, you know that like loud ringing noise or like how it in like TV static. It's like a
Yeah.
mixture of that combined. Okay, so and again, all of this is fictional, but there are people, as I said, people to believe it. There were these two girls in not Washington, Wisconsin, 12-year-old girls actually, Anissa and Morgan, and this is called the Slenderman Stabbing. If anyone wants to look into it more, I only have a little bit of information. So they were like really into the Slenderman stories and stuff like that too, and wanted to become one of his proxies, and decided to lure their friend Peyton out into the forest and stabbed her 19 times. Now, both of them are in like a psych ward or the hospital, like mental hospital or whatever. And the girl ended up surviving because the knife blade didn't like hit her heart or damage anything too much because it was like a shorter blade. This happened back in like 2014, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah, say they're both in. Sorry, no, the Morgan girl is still in the mental health institute, and the other girl, Anissa, was released and is like under supervision till she's like in her 30s, so that this doesn't happen again.
Yeah, I actually. No, go ahead. Finish up what you're gonna say.
Okay, the whole Slenderman thing, like he's just like I said, just kind of there. I don't have very much on him. He's like the main one. He tells them all what to do, helps them, runs everything, and then obviously people are trying to be his proxies and stuff.
Which I actually remember hearing about these murders when they first happened, and then I've heard other podcasts talk about them since. But it's crazy what something internet based can make teenagers do. It just it's insane. It's insane. But
like yeah,
and
like 12-year-old girls are doing this. Like
yeah,
12-year-olds.
I mean, there's been plenty of child murderers before in the past. It's happened, but to do it over something because you want to become a proxy for someone who's supposedly not real, supposedly is a story that someone made up once and became a huge hit. Which there was a Slenderman movie I know called Slender. I think it came out like in 16 or 17, something like that. Yeah. And I don't know if you've seen it, but
I have not. I want to, but I have not had the chance.
I haven't seen it either because it's not my genre per se. But I'm kind of wondering now if the movie actually relates to Creepypasta at all, or if it's just a complete other thing.
And
completely.
And another thing is Slenderman has brothers too. There's like Trenderman, Offenderman, Splitterman. There's a whole bunch of them. I think it's less than 7 though. But yeah, he's got brothers. It's a huge, crazy world of these stories. Yeah.
Yeah, I just looking up the pictures to put in my ad for this and to put on the cover of the podcast episode. I could tell just by the amount of characters in some of these. I'm like, oh my god, I didn't know it was this. I didn't realize it was this big. I mean, I know.
Oh yeah, there's
Creepypasta's been
There's
around for a long time now, but
there's like X virus, one character named Freddy, which I think is ironic. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of them.
so yeah, maybe someday we can definitely do a part 2 of this if fans want to hear it. Which fans, if you do, let me know. I can definitely make it happen sometime in the future. But for now, we'll call it a night because we are hitting an hour and a half, and we want people to want to come back for more too. So we'll save some of the other ones for next time. So tell them one more time about your podcast, please. The word I can't think of at this moment. Tell them all about it.
So as I said in the beginning, it's a podcast basically about everything. It's called All Answers with Allie. It's a podcast of me and my friends talking about things from like what's going on in the world, holidays, the teenage mind, and paranormal and creepypastas, and serial killers. But we've got a whole range of stuff.
Which is unique, because I don't think I've ever heard of another podcast where teenagers talking about this stuff. Usually it's people in their 20s and up that talk about this stuff on podcasts. So it's definitely a unique perspective, and people should check it out. Just don't be creeps, people. Don't be creeps. That's the only thing please. I have no love for creeps, but other than that, check it out. Support them. 5 stars on Spotify if you like it, of course. Same as mine, please. But
that was very much appreciated.
As all my listeners know, you can find all the stuff I do on Paranormal the New Normal Facebook group, and you find out about all the new episodes coming out for this show on there as well. So head over to that Facebook group and ask to join up. I have not turned anybody away yet, and I see no reason I will, unless I have to. And of course, you can find me on Twitter and the Gram as Juggalo Bastard, and you can find me on Facebook as Jeremy Bryant. And I want to thank my guest Allie for coming on today. Definitely giving me a look into something I had no idea really existed beyond Slenderman. So thank you for coming on, and I will see you guys in a couple days for Saturday's episode.
All right.
Have a good
night.
Bye,
everyone.